Hello and welcome to the Spark and the Forge podcast. I'm Subrata Kar, and this is where we unpack the boldest shifts in tech, systems, and outcomes with data that matters. Here is what I'm seeing right now. You see, most companies build AI that looks amazing in demo, but when they try to move it to production, when they try to make it real, it breaks. Integration fails. Governance gaps emerge. They end up with beautiful theater instead of business value. 42% of the companies gave up on their AI projects this year, and that's double from last year. And the problem isn't necessarily resources or talents, it's governance, it's data integration, it is how they approach the problem systematically. To understand this, I sat down with Ari Kaplan. He is the global head of evangelism at Databricks. For 25 years, he's been proving one principle: small teams thinking systematically beat unlimited resources. He worked with Major League Baseball teams on analytics. Smaller market teams beat bigger teams in the playoffs with half the budget. And that's the Moneyball story. And now he's watching the exact pattern determine winners and losers in the enterprise AI. And here is what changed the game for the winners. One financial company went from 55% prediction accuracy to 85%, not by building bigger AI models, but by thinking systematically, by building compound system architecture. In this conversation, Ari breaks down the exact pattern that separates the winners. So, if you are a startup founder, enterprise AI leader, or investor evaluating AI initiatives, this episode you don't want to miss. And now, following is my conversation with Ari Kaplan. All right. So, Ari, thanks for doing this. And it is such a pleasure to talk to you. And welcome to the Spark and the Fudge podcast.
Yeah, it's such a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you. And thank you to all the listeners.
I have been looking at this weird thing that is happening with AI investments right now. So, we got this 42% of the companies just giving up on their AI projects this year. And that's double from last year. But then you got companies doubling down and throwing even more money at it. So, from what you are seeing across thousands of implementations, what's actually causing this split? And why are some companies abandoning while others are succeeding?
Yeah, well, AI is a broad term. AI still means a bunch of things to a bunch of people, but for me, like it's a combination of getting better insights, so helping companies better make predictions. AI is also like a productivity enhancement, whether you're a software developer, so non-technical people, sales, marketing, finance, HR could all do their jobs better. So um, depending on how you define AI, like all of those areas could be failures or all of them can be successes. So what does the question mean? What are the languages of your environment versus like a generalized AI like image generation? So there's a whole, we'll get into reasons why companies fail and succeed, but the failure largely is a lack of governance where they just can't find the data or the AI isn't trained or part of the governance is keeping humans in the loop. So basically, companies fail since they just don't know how to govern and make really actionable insights. And we were talking beforehand, you made a phrase that I love, AI theatrics. So are you actually solving a business? Or are you doing AI theatrics? Or are you just experimenting?
This reminds me of your Moneyball work. Small budget teams weren't just trying harder, but they had fundamentally different approaches to solve problem. And they saw opportunities in data that unlimited budget franchisee completely missed. So when you look
Mhm.
at companies reaching production, that top of the pyramid versus the one stuck in the pilot purgatory, what are they doing dramatically different, and what's actual approach that separates them?
Yeah, so great analogy. And for people listening, Moneyball was a story and a movie about a long standing industry, sports, which actually has great application to other long standing industries: health, life science, financial, public sector, manufacturing, CPG. But in the world of sports, it's
Hmm.
been done this way for 120 years, finding insights that are actionable. So I think actionable is like the key to that answer. There are trivia, like what did somebody do or what did something happen in the past, but really finding, it's like finding causal data, like what is actual in real life. If you do some action, this is what will happen in real life. And so humans are naturally biased in the world of sports. People, their gut feel for this player will do well with or without data. It may be a good or a bad suggestion, but it's just a big risk. So, how do you find the causal data? How do you find the actionable insights from this vast amount of noise? So that's like fundamentally um, the basis of it. But then, you posed a good way to phrase it. Like, how do you get an advantage if in baseball there are 30 teams and they basically have the same amount of information. They all basically have people that are smart. This is now like the post Moneyball, that are smart, that have um, the ability to ask similar questions. The advantage then is, number one, being able to get more clear insights. We need people that understand the business. In our world, baseball, how do you play the game? How are the rules changing? In other industries, it might be people that understand how the healthcare system works, or what the legal frameworks are of making a deal with your manufacturing. So it needs people that understand the business to be able to collaborate with the data scientists, and then it also needs to understand math or probability. Since AI, data science, is going to give you a recommendation,
Hmm.
like in baseball, which player should you get or what the expected value of the player will be. But you also have to understand what are the risks. So it's not just we recommend this player, but here is like the variance we expect in the coming year. So you could have a high risk, high reward player, high reward, low risk player, and by having that information, that helps these smaller market teams compete with bigger market teams. Now, we're going through the playoffs and World Series, and this team, the Brewers, beat a team, the Cubs, in the playoffs with half of their budget, half of the money spent towards players. And that's just from, you can have owners that spend more money and get better players, but you could be very competitive with a smaller budget. And that's where hopefully the listeners get inspired. You
Yeah.
can have very little budget, make today these intelligent applications in a weekend that used to take months to do. So it's a great AI could be a great equalizer.
So, for executives who need to evaluate their AI investments based on the systematic differences that you are seeing, what should they actually be looking for in the organizations, and how do they know if they are set up to be in that production success group versus heading towards this pilot and demo graveyard?
If you have value now, like what is the moat? How hard is it to duplicate or not? And then is your strategy open source? Is it the strategy to sell stuff? Is the strategy to not sell stuff but to get acquired? I mean, those are all valid, but that's the other thing I look at.
One thing that we continue to see that, many companies today, they're able to give fantastic demo. There are a lot of pilots, projects, but the challenge happens when companies scale from slick demo to serving millions. When you have to really deploy your product in production, it's a different game altogether, because then you need to integrate with so many different systems, different applications, infrastructure, and what have you. So, demo to production journey, what's causing these integration crashes, and how do we stop them?
So it's a challenge. Does it actually work? And by the way, I'm like, I deal like with Databricks. We have one customer, Arctic Wolf, that manages 1 trillion records every day, almost 400 trillion records a year. Akamai, which is like the infrastructure of the internet, about a quarter of all internet traffic goes through Akamai. Like that is massive scale. So you're, even a database query back 40 years ago when companies like Oracle and Teradata were coming out, databases were in the scale of billions of records, and now it's in the scale of trillions or tens of trillions of records. So there's like, can you scale in size? Does that affect performance? If you go from X to 1,000X, is your performance going to degrade so significantly it's not a viable product? Also in cost, does your product need to have move data from one area to another, in which case it may work fine in your demo now, but with 4 times the data, it'll be 4 times the cost and movement. The other way it scales is just like fails to scale is governance. If companies, start opening it up from just internal to having, third-party companies or their end customers use it, does it open up like data leakage, or governance questions? Are you compliant? So those are like maybe 4 or 5 ways that these smaller demo pilots fail to scale.
But here is what I keep seeing happening, and maybe you have seen some cascading pattern though. The company gets their customer service AI working beautifully, then they try to connect with the sales system, and suddenly both the systems are broken.
Yeah.
And then the inventory AI conflicts with pricing AI.
Yeah.
Everything worked in isolation, but it fails when it's integrated, because today we have got so many companies coming up with AI apps. They're infrastructure companies, but then when you want to put them all together, there is something very different approach needed. So
Mhm.
as we invest on AI technologies, on applications to really deliver value, we also would like to see some of these things move from demo to production. And they must be doing something very different, some of those companies, where things really work. Based upon your perspective, what's really causing these cascading failures?
I think, great question. Like 3 years ago or 4 years ago, when the more modern Gen AI came out, it was like the infrastructure was the problem. There weren't enough skills for people to know how to fine tune an LLM. So those people that had that skill were getting hired left and right. There weren't enough of them. But now, being able to create entire new foundational models, and this is just the Gen AI subset of it all. AI is much broader, but to do foundational models, fine tune models, RAG on models was very, very hard to do. I think that's very easy now. So the problem has shifted to, a couple things. One is, uh, like the data integration, like what you're saying, or the logic information. Um, before, I would say like 3 epochs. One is just general relational OLAP data, things like Oracle and MySQL, SQL Server, very structured data, and that became very mature. Then you companies added on what you might call traditional or classical AI, which is predictive analytics, classification analytics. If you or the listeners have heard of linear regression or gradient boosted trees, it's like based on this series, a baseball player has done this well over the last 4 years. We can predict how that trend will continue. That's classical machine learning. That was hard to do, but then that matured. And now the problem is exactly what you're saying. How do you get multiple data sources synchronized? And then you have agents, AI agents, which could do different tasks. One could be very good at predicting weather. One could be very good at, call center log, like what's the sentiment of this person. Another agent could be good at researching a company that the call center is on the phone with and giving a one sentence summary of what the company does or who the customer is. But then integrating it all together is a challenge. There's fuzzy logic. Like I worked with a company, PetSmart, and they acquired a company, Chewy. One company um, had stores for like dog and cat food, and that people go in physically. The company they acquired was all like a virtual. You buy it and they send it to you in the mail. The dog and cat food. But their big problem was integration. One company had the word street in the address, the other had ST period. Um, and that's hard to do even with AI these days. How do you integrate data, challenge when, and then multiply it? More advanced AI systems might integrate a dozen agents. You may now enable your employees um, to run thousands or tens of thousands of agents every day. And that's a really hard uh, challenge to make these agents or building blocks work together. And then not just work together, but then how do you have humans in the loop to oversee and give a thumbs of approval or thumbs down? Just humans in the loop are, if you're not including them, it just makes the projects fail more easily. It's like too late when it fails.
Yeah, let me ask you about the platform infrastructure. And there has been this wave of innovation. So Databricks with Lake Base, Unity Catalog, Summit, you guys discussed. AWS with some agent capabilities, something that you talked about now quickly. Others making similar moves. So clearly, the vendors are racing to solve this problem. What's actual infrastructure gap driving this? And here is what I'm seeing in how companies address it. It is not a platforms versus specialized tools problem, but platform plus specialized tools, if you will, working together. So platforms handling the data and orchestration, whereas the specialized applications providing the domain expertise on top of it. Could be logistics, could be sales and marketing, could be pricing, could be freight, could be any of these. So is that the architecture that's actually working in production from what you see today?
Yeah. So from where I sit, I'm at Databricks, and we're a partner first company. We have over 5,000 partners. So our philosophy is in that we have one platform and it does everything in the world. Uh, our partners, especially our tech partners, they have value add. Maybe they connect to Excel spreadsheets super well, or maybe they can ingest real time data with lower latency. Um, and so on one hand, we want to be like the underlying platform where you contain all your data, a lake house. All you avoid data siloing. That's a great use for a platform, and then you govern it all through Unity Catalog. But that's like a governance framework. How do you, which is even more important with AI, when you can now have somebody take data from AI, take data from one source, a second source, and maybe the second source has private information like social security or their credit card information, and that one person has access. But if they create a new, like materialized view, a new table, and then they make that into production, they just violated the governance. So that's
Hmm.
where Unity Catalog comes in, is it has full end-to-end lineage. That's where one platform is super helpful. Since if you have more than one platform, you lose a lot of that. Like, so the reason that's so important is if you're a company, that call center example, we've been riffing on, some data may be in a data warehouse, some may be on this lake based like OLTP, some may be unstructured data like the audio of the law of the call, or the transcription of the call, and some may be structured. So if you are asking a question and you don't have OLTP data part of the answer, then your data is not going to be as accurate or insightful if you have OLTP. Just for one example. So you want that one platform for uh, avoiding data silos and for governing it. And then you want to add on technology or add on sources of data or better ways, like Power BI, Tableau are awesome at visualizing it.
Yeah. So if you imagine a architecture where a company may be running their SAP, Salesforce, workforce management, even WMS, and they got so many apps that coming up, Price FX, Zendesk, Yonder, and many of these apps. Is it fair to say the layer two that you talked about in terms of the data intelligence platform company like yours provide, they provide that orchestration layer between the apps and the enterprise system?
Exactly. So that's where Unity Catalog comes in handy. I refer to it as like a governance layer, but it's a lot more than that.
Yep.
It's like being able to just search through all of your data. So if you have that combination, SAP and Salesforce and Zendesk, and maybe I'll add in Slack, since a lot of a question, where, whatever it is, call center, there's a bug or an issue ticket. Um, it if you don't have that semantic layer, which Unity Catalog provides, um, uh, you'd have to write like 5 different programs one at a time through each of them. But the word like fiscal year or or satisfactory may have different meanings in each of those different systems. So that's where that Unity Catalog is also like a central store for metrics, a central store for semantics, um, and that becomes super powerful across applications. And I love that you brought up SAP first. We at Databricks, I did this amazing enablement session. 7,000 people showed up, but we have
Mm.
a partnership, BDC, Business Development Cloud, and people want to just ask a question from SAP. How is my supply chain? Where's my chain most likely to have a problem around the world? We have 10,000 stores. Where are we going to be out of stock? And SAP, love the company, but it's they have this, it's called metadata. It's like this proprietary
Right.
format, hexadecimal things. So it might read HGGG132. You have no idea what that means. So that's where the semantic layer kind of translates this metadata into like usable information for SQL queries, for chatbots, for Python programming, and that's where the potential of AI comes in, getting these
Got it.
closed, meta systems to be open.
So, to simplify for people who are listening, is it fair to say um, the integration challenge requires not just technical approach, but a systematic architectural approach? And the enterprises figuring this out are probably reaching the production successfully and faster. than others who are still stuck in the demo purgatory. Is that a fair summary, or would you like to articulate it in your way?
No, that's a incredible summary. And the one thing to add, so that's the technical side. On the people side, companies or people that are have two characteristics. One is being agile, so being willing to take new technology and constantly cycle in new methods. How can you, number one, know what out there exists? It's by watching podcasts like this or subscribing to newsletters or going to events, but being agile, learning what the latest and greatest is and being able to flip things in, which seem to be happening every week. And then the second thing is just the culture of the company. If you're a startup, you're in control of that. But if you're part of a bigger company, um, from the top, sometimes they're like, we're already making money, or this is how we make money. This is how we've always been. We don't want to experiment. We don't want to dedicate resources to do what they may perceive as like academic studies that they don't understand the ROI quite yet. So, like the experimental phase or the innovation phase, they're kind of flatlined. So if you have a company where from the top they want to drive innovation, like appropriate innovation, that is the another big sign.
So let's talk about the vendor side of this equation. Which AI companies are actually winning deals in these enterprises? And what separates the ones getting traction from those with impressive technology, but they have no buyers? What does the competitive landscape tell us about where this money should flow in? What's your view on this?
Yeah, so there, like when I hear AI company, I hear like two types. One is, I think what we've largely talked about. These are the companies that provide like software technology to help people build AI applications or AI processing. So that's kind of like AI is like the core of what they're offering, AI software company. But then there are so many other companies where AI is underneath. They may use the word AI or not, but they're more like the application or the data company
Right.
that's leveraging AI to make their product better. And that is where there's so much opportunity and hyper growth. But it's those companies that have an idea, um, and AI apps are such a ripe, I think in the next year to 2 to 3 years, even, it's such ripe for the picking. The ability for non-technical people to do like what you might hear vibe coding, or there are tools like Databricks has Agent Bricks. We have Databricks apps, um, and we're not saying we're perfect. We might get you quarter or third of the way from making a full-fledged application, unless it's like a straightforward, then we get you all the way there. And then the humans go and can build the rest of the way. But to make a company like LinkedIn or DocuSign or Slack, even, uh, few people or even one person can use AI to build out like what used to take a year to get the first version of LinkedIn, for example, you could probably do in a weekend, which is remarkable. It's like open game to make companies that AI helps accelerate. And then the other thing is, even if you're in the category of none of the above, every worker can and should use AI as a productivity tool. Don't necessarily need a technology to use these productivity tools, whether it's our own, whether it's Cursor, Perplexity, I'm probably missing a bunch, Anthropic. They have Google, have all these incredible tools that help you with everything. Extract information from documents, extract information from videos. Anyone who is willing to try out these tools, they're going to have an advantage.
Do you also, this is probably one of those moments where The progress of AI and now with agentic AI is phenomenal. Many companies, they have no buyers.
I've been part of companies where 100% their software offering adds a ton of value, but there are not buyers. And different reasons. It could be it's either a product problem, a communication problem, or uh, I don't know, marketing or scaling problem. But number one, does the product literally add value? And
Hmm.
the best way to do that is, maybe you experienced it. The biggest challenge is the first customers you have are usually like friends and family. Might be the company you're working for, or it might be a very close friend where you're not charging them anything and they go and they implement it and they find value. So that's the first challenge. The next challenge is getting your first dollar. Is somebody willing to pay anything for your product? If your business model is making money, doesn't necessarily have to be. You could start a company that does technology that would be open sourced, and then the exit is to get acquired. But yeah, most companies, is somebody willing to implement it in production or pay money for it? Then the next challenge is, can you get somebody who's not a friend to implement it? So somebody who is outside your world is the next challenge. And every step of the way, if you're not getting traction, you have to ask yourself. So for me, one of the biggest hurdles is you have to have a brand. You have to be able to say in one or two sentences where does your company fit in? Where does it add value? To me, um, that's where almost every company loses like my interest, where they just come and say, I have an agentic system that then they just use buzzwords. Or be empathetic, put yourself in their shoes. And if you were to walk up to yourself in the mirror and say, what do you do? Would you be able to understand it yourself? If you have a booth at a trade show, I go to trade shows a lot, summits, and you walk up and down and it's mind numbing, like similar words like improve process, lower cost, increase scale, lower barriers, improve efficiency, and you don't know what it actually means. So it's even hard to get a phone call with a buyer unless you could define your brand. So that may be, get a product that works, but
Yeah.
articulate it so people actually get interested. If you
Yeah.
can get that far, you have a much better chance at success. And then once you get there, the challenge becomes, how do you market yourself?
Yeah.
So you go from having to sell each customer by hand, by much effort. Is it advertising? Is it search engine optimization, marketing? But then how do you scale? Then once you figure that out, then you become a unicorn, perhaps.
Here's another shift that I'm seeing in how enterprises today are spending. It used to be, innovation labs with some experimental budgets to start with, bunch of pilots, but now it is increasingly the central IT, um, with operational budgets, production system that needs to run reliably. What does this spending shift from experimental to operational budgets actually mean? How does this change in terms of who wins and who loses in this competitive landscape?
Yeah, well, I want to hope to inspire a lot of the entrepreneurs listening. So maybe 5 years ago, I'd go around to events or talk to one-on-one executives, and it was awkward to bring up AI, even predictive analytics. Like what with Moneyball, you would feel they were just focused on getting the data, and traditional business intelligence, since it was reliable and helpful. And you'd feel weird saying you should do AI, you can better make a prediction and get better players, find weaknesses in your opponents. Very awkward. And then when ChatGPT came out and extension more AI, it flipped. And now you have executives saying, we want AI without even knowing what it is. It's that hype, the AI theatrics. Um, so it's more like we got to experiment and you almost we or I had to flip around and say you still need the good data like what we're talking about, you still need that integration. But the good news for entrepreneurs is when the executives of the company say I want, let's just say, AI without knowing what it is, they they're under pressure, competitive pressure, to get insights faster, better, easier, more democratized, more scalable. And so the budgets have opened up for everything. AI for the infrastructure under it, for the storage. That's why NVIDIA has done so well. Other chip manufacturers, that's why Databricks, Snowflake, Microsoft, Google, then all these other companies that didn't even exist 3 years ago, Anthropic, Perplexity, and so on, have gone tremendously up. So the good news is budgets from the executives, they are opening up more room for experimentation. And it's kind of like a dial. On one hand, like at the beginning of Moneyball, nobody wanted to experiment. Um, but I came in, I worked for the Dodgers, worked for the Cubs. We found one use case that helped us win 8 to 9 games a year. I'm only using data. One more example then is Fox Sports. It's like a top, they have broadcast, they have
Hmm.
sports betting. Um, it's like a major channel and network and broadcast globally. And they started, well, it is Databricks, but they're using Agent Bricks. And their old search, you would go to their website and just ask a question, who's playing cricket in Hyderabad this week, and it'll give an answer. But that was keyword search. If you had to have the exact match, um, no pun intended, it would give the insights. But now they're using Gen AI to say not only who's playing, but here are the odds. Here's what the weather would be. Give a nation that they may not have even asked. Doing research, if you were to bet, um, we think this team will win over that team with this odds. Do you want to place a bet? So it like doesn't just answer; it gives them this whole like dashboard as an insight. And now I forget the number, but something like 40% of all type of searches on Fox Sport goes through you even see powered by Databricks. And then they have this mobile app called Cletus, um, where on your mobile phone, you're at a bar, you could just interact with it in a chatbot. And the challenge with that for that every company faces is if you ask a question, and you use a general chat GPT, you use the word cricket, it may sometimes randomly hallucinate and look at the insect. So they had to do uh, extra effort to make their chatbot like be very specific and accurate on their insights. That's where the hard part is.
Right. Here is where I need your systematic framework. And this connects to your Moneyball work. So in baseball, you had certain specific metrics that mattered more than other for predicting success. So when you evaluate an AI company, whether as an investor looking at pitch or an executive evaluating a competitive threat, what's your systemic frame?
Yeah, so it's very similar to Moneyball in that there are different ways to evaluate talent. The talent is a company that you might be investing in, or the talent might be an actual baseball player. Like one of the big conflicts in Moneyball is you have metrics that you could measure, like how quickly can you swing a bat, how fast can you throw a pitch, can you throw a pitch with accuracy. Those are things that could actually be measured, but they're things that are more like human behavior. Can this perform under pressure? Do we think, they're 18 years old now? Are they going to improve and be a better athlete, or have they already reached their peak? And that's very hard to quantifiably measure. It's the human factor. And same thing with investment. It's easier to measure, okay, this company has some uh, product. Here's how much more value it might add to a company. Here's the TAM, the total addressable market. They have great technology, but only a subset of companies may get value out of it. Or every company on the planet, like cybersecurity improvement, everybody needs cybersecurity. Um, that is a bigger addressable market. Those things are quantifiable. The less quantifiable are looking at like the leaders, uh, like the entrepreneurs themselves. Are these people that can do the job? Are they technical, and will the product be effective? Are they when I say humble, are they willing to take feedback and change their path? So some entrepreneurs you work with, they come up with a great idea. That's like they did a PhD in that. Um, and they're willing to learn more, or they did their PhD and they only want to stick to this one example. So are people willing, if I'm the investor, to listen to my advice? Um, uh, are they able to articulate? Are they good salespeople, which is very much needed to get the company off the ground and whatever the number is, the first million in sales? Are they willing to bring on partners? So when they grow, like, are they an individual type of person where you don't think they'd work well in a team? Have they ever led a team before? And if not, do you think they can do it for the first time? Um, that's kind of like evaluating the talent, quantifiable, addressable
Sure.
market, and talent.
Let me put a scenario. So, if one company has an impressive technology and big name investors like Sequoia, but
Yeah.
another has fewer resources, real production customers, how do you make that call?
Yeah, great question. And similar, like with Moneyball, some players, all the big market teams, the Sequoias and Horowitzes of the world, Insight Partners, all the big players are going after, all the big companies, teams are going after the exciting folks. And then we would get a scout that would recognize a player that everyone else gave up with. Or they were a player that was good 5 years ago, their arm broke, they had surgery. We think they could be fixed. Like one great player, Jake Arrieta, when the Cubs won the World Series, we um, he was a good player when he was younger. Then he kind of went down, and we thought if we could make one adjustment, have him throw one different type of pitch, he would be able to reclaim it. And he did, and he threw a no hitter. He became one of the most important factors. But nobody else was even looking at him as a player. So the way I look at things is well, number one, uh, if you are a small company and you have an idea and you find value in it, it doesn't even matter if they're pre-customer. That may add risk if they don't have a customer yet. But if I see this great market opportunity, I don't want to call out names, but I remember one company that came to me. Well, I get many companies, but one company that came to me more recently in the AI space, and it was only like 3 people. And I love the idea. um, like they were able, like for example, with Excel to do things much better, faster, ask questions of Excel spreadsheets with chatbots. And that was a great idea. And now, yeah, they got a ton of funding and they're off to the races, so to speak, hundreds of employees.
Right?
Then but the upside is huge.
Yeah.
If it's the seed round or the series A round, the upside is tremendous, but bigger risk. But if they're already invested, um, the big firms may want to see 2, 3, 5 times the value on later stages. Earlier stages, you could see 100 times your value, which is huge. And yeah, like one example. I know a lot of your listeners are in India. I went to
Yeah.
Caltech. My next door neighbor and good friend of mine, Sabir Bhatia, founded Hotmail. And
Mhm.
he, when he started out, didn't make any money. He was making email accounts and giving it away for free. They didn't make money. All the big investors kind of passed him up. But then Menlo Ventures, Doug Carlisle said, you know what? This is pretty wild. You're giving away a product, but it costs you more since it doesn't cost you money to make an email account, um, just like the salary of the employees, similar to the way Uber and Lyft and other things do. Airbnb, they're just software, and everyone else pays for like the cars or the hotels you're renting. And he ended up selling it for hundreds of millions of dollars. And that was like sparking a whole new business model. But if you wait until they get profit, probably would have waited forever. Didn't happen. But if you got in early and saw this guy is wild, he's an innovator, he is bold, he can go in front of an audience and wow the crowd. Um, that could be, uh, another great success. But then, look at Sam Altman, ChatGPT, huge winner. If I think it was recorded, but yeah, I heard about like some of his early pitches, and people would laugh at him. Like investors would laugh at him when he said like what ChatGPT would do, and he gave a demo like, here you ask a question and it gives an answer. Write a poem like a pirate. And the VCs are like, how are you going to make money? And he was like, I'll figure that out down the road. But the firms that believed in him made tremendous more money. But that is not like, for an entrepreneur, you can't have just like a bold personality with substance. You need that balance. But that's how you win against, as a small company against big companies. Storytelling, painting the picture, that you might be early stage, but here's the total addressable market, and we already have signal. I've talked to 5 companies. It doesn't have to be that many. Talk to a big company, talk to a medium company, and a small company, and they all see value. That's why we believe, and then what does the funding do? This funding gets us and enables us to get to the next level. We'll be able to answer these more investment questions with your funding, and if successful, then you could fund more. Since venture firms, one thing I learned being an entrepreneur is most of them don't just fund you in the first round. They fund you in the first round and reserve more money in the event that you meet criteria, and they want to invest in the next round. So the
Right.
first round is to answer more questions, show market validation and scalability. But yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely small companies from my evaluation criteria. Sometimes I get more excited if I'm an investor since there's more upside. More risk to fail, but more upside.
So you've given us a decision framework separating sustainable AI companies from the hype-driven ones. So if I can summarize, correct me, what's clear to me is that we probably have passed that era where demo drive valuations. Now we're at a stage where companies are proving um, they can solve real enterprise challenges. They have real clients. They're delivering value. They're able to tell stories. They're able to articulate. They have a great team. And we talked about some of the integration problems, the infrastructure gap that we discussed. And those are the ones who are really building sustainable businesses. Um, is that a good summary or on this particular
Yeah, it's a
segment?
great summary. And I don't want to over hype or over excite people, but yeah, I think in the next 3 to 5 years, there's so many opportunities. Like I teach courses, data science and analytics, and some people have been in the industry for 20 years of my students. Some of them, they've never coded in Python, but you start a company today, and in some ways you're on equal footing as some of the larger companies. The ability to go from startup to have a viable product there are tools that are out there that help you develop things much faster. So what used to take 18 months, maybe you could do in 1 month, maybe you could do um, in a couple weeks. And then as these tools improve, you could probably, like vibe coding is like a, funny, people make fun of it still, but being able to, create these demos and products, um, and when you string together agents, this cycle time is faster than ever. So if you're haven't ever done AI before, do a little bit of time to learn it, and then you'll be on just about equal footing with somebody who has 20 years experience. And that's changing the whole market. And that's huge
Yeah.
opportunity for the new.
And here is where it caught my attention. One of the company that came to my mind is a FactSet. And I think you talked about that in one of your articles. They moved from a single model hitting 55% accuracy to a compound AI system achieving 85%. I know it sounds a bit of a jargon, but if you could sort of, simplify it, make it clear for people, for the listeners, what's the difference between a single model systems, a compound systems, and what's really happening in terms of technically when you build these compound systems that get you from 55% to 85% accuracy.
Yeah, great question. And this is what has given me my own personal joy working with baseball teams. And so I'll give an example for that. You're evaluating a player's performance. At first, you might look at results. What did they do? How many hits did they get? How many outs did they get? And that could give you insights. That may give you, 20% accuracy. Then the fun part is it's called feature engineering. Feature is like another word for variable. What new types of ideas can you extract from your existing data? So, like, how do they hit under pressure? How do they hit um, during day versus night? You're coming up with new ideas. And so that accuracy might go up 5%. Then you start bringing in new data sets. And that's where this fact set is another great example. So
Mm.
once you bring in weather, um, if the wind's blowing out versus in baseball, the ball might travel an extra 20 meters. It's a huge amount. The wind is assisting it or not. And that's affecting the performance of players. That's biasing the data. So if you bring in a new data source, um, that accuracy may go up 10%. Then you could go, aha, there some players were injured, some are healthy. Let's bring in injury data and bring in people who are familiar with how injuries work and recovery time works. When you add this new data source, it increases it by 5-10%. Then you get scouting reports, people that observe the player, and you notice whenever a scout puts the word deceptive or super, it adds value. When they use the word lazy or distracted, it removes value, but that adds accuracy. So basically, making new variables or features to your predictions, or in the Gen AI world, making new semantics. It could be new data sources. And that's the fact set model. And that's like a foundational approach. You have a model, you have a Gen AI, um, you give some insight or make a prediction. In traditional machine learning, there's a way to quantify that, things called R squared or log loss or Gini norm. That's a number to how accurate the model is. In LLM, there are some models that are out, some judges that are out there. Some are still human judges, some are automated judges. So that cycle of feedback, try new data, try new combinations and rules of data, are getting faster and faster. So with FactSet, that was the difference from the 50 something to 80 something accuracy. They used more agents to get more accurate models, more like combination of the data. And that's what, when it comes down to it in simple terms, when the whole thought of data science is the more variety of information that you put into a question, generally the more accurate the insight is. Not always, but it's either the same accuracy or improved accuracy.
Talk a little bit about the single model versus the compound systems.
Yes, single model is like these foundational models. Maybe they're built on Taylor Swift lyrics or on how Modi gives a speech or what he puts out on social media. Um, but if you're a FactSet and you want, which is like a financial company, your model should be based in the context of your data. It shouldn't matter what Taylor Swift lyrics are, but so general models can answer more questions but less accurately. And so companies want to fine tune or make their own specific models, perhaps even smaller models that are highly accurate on a smaller amount of data. It's trained on the language. So FactSet, the word deceptive, um, probably indicates there's some fraud going on. But in baseball, deceptive means the pitcher, you don't know what pitch type is coming since the way they hold their finger is hard to visually see as a batter. So that's where these smaller um, models that you string together, one model great at weather, one model great at predictive maintenance, one model great at understanding sentiment of somebody calling into the call center. Are they happy, sad? Or is it urgent or not? Um, you string those together of smaller but models that are more accurate at specifically what they do, and you're going to have more success. But you still need like a framework to evaluate which of these, we call them agent bricks, but which of these little smaller, they could be a model, it could just be a business rule, it could be a traditional machine learning, it could be a business intelligence, it could be just an if then else statement. But stringing all these modules together in the right order really takes people that understand the business to ensure accuracy. But you do that, it's easier and easier every day, and your accuracy goes up. If you are a company and you're building this, if your accuracy goes up, your customers are going to come, they're going to pay money, they're going to pay more money, they're going to tell their friends, and then you're going to get more and more investment, maybe even be profitable.
So we've seen that AI salaries today jump from, I don't know, $250,000 to $350,000 for mid-level positions. New researchers getting even multi-million dollar kind of a stock grants. From what you are seeing with the startups that are successfully building this kind of systems, how are they actually solving this talent problem?
Yeah, it's kind of like an interesting job market. I see like the top talent very hard to recruit and keep them there. There's some personalities that every year they may jump for more and more money. So even if you get them, you have to like keep them. Um, so some of my friends like constantly being recruited. Um, Other of my friends that I've known for a while that are in traditional machine learning, they can't get jobs. They send 500 resumes out and they don't get a call back. So there's like the haves and the have-nots. Um, and some people I know are really good, and I would hire them. But there's just so much noise and competition. I think the interview process is kind of broken. So like having a reputation, if you have a reputation for being like an awesome developer, yeah, you can get the million or multi-million if it includes RSU or stock option opportunity. But you have to be very good at explaining your brand or having success with some really cool AI project that went production. Um, but yeah, if you're looking for talent, it's like the same challenge of trying to find a player or just talking themselves up, and which is why the interview and everything's kind of broken. Back in the day, like how do you evaluate a software developer? If they have Python on their resume, you can't evaluate it. You don't know if they're expert or not enough. So maybe if they have a GitHub repository, you could evaluate it. Um, I don't know where I'm, where else there, but yeah. So basically, if they have buzzwords, it's how to evaluate. If one person wrote 50,000 lines of code and another person wrote 10,000 lines of code, how do you even evaluate who's better? You can't. You It's hard to measure like the creativity, the output, unless they've been not just a part of a project that's been successful. So I'd love to see somebody that has success implementing something at massive scale, but really understanding what role they played. For me, it's a lot about teamwork and collaboration. So if they are a superstar, they've developed like hands-on some really cool projects, but they've worked on a team. Sometimes they've been the coder and someone else was giving them direction. Sometimes they've been the one giving direction and other people code. Like that would be like the magic for me.
And this is where your baseball analogy will really
Yeah,
play out, because the same thing happens in the big budget teams versus the ones who doesn't have enough budget to really do something. So,
yeah, it's really a team. You aren't just hitting a baseball; you're driving other people in by hitting in, as part of a team.
right.
And in software development, most of the time, yeah, I look at strengths. You're part of a group of developers, project managers, business people, account reps, sales. So how do you make the team better? And like, where do you fit in? So I'm a big advocate of strength, built of identifying strength. So every company I'm with, some people love meetings, they love process, they love putting tickets together and doing scrums and the process. And other people, they're pure creative. They hate process. They don't like working on teams. But you know what? That might not be it might be a problem, or it might not be if they could just go off in isolation and come up with stuff, and then somebody helps integrate it. So basically, for a player evaluation, if they don't have a strength that we need, I wouldn't hire them. They might be great at um, what's called a shortstop, one position, but if we're already covered there, I don't need it. Um, but if they add value in another way and we're lacking in that value or can improve, how do you have the strengths of like 20 teammates that they all add to each other?
Here is another interesting shift that I'm seeing, which is we're moving away from bigger model is always better to more specialized, efficient solutions. And there is this view emerging, and Alex Wang and others talking about it, about the data becoming the real differentiator, building these proprietary data flywheels that competitors can't reach. From what you actually are seeing with the implementation that across various things, how do you see this pattern playing out? And are companies really building data moats as their competitive edge, or is it something else entirely?
Yeah, great question. And yeah, I think the next 3 to 5 years, surely if you could do something better infrastructure wise or software development efficiency wise, keep doing that. There's always room for that. But yeah, I see at a macro level companies that can just help offer insights or help the companies democratize and find their own better insights are going to win. Um, I was just yesterday at a conference at an oil and gas company, and they have a moat. They have been collecting like IoT data for 20 years. As IoT improved, their data improved, but they have 20 years of data, so they can make insights on when defects are coming. These are pipes that don't break every day, but maybe it takes 20 years for rust and debris to fill on the inside. So they have a great data moat. Uh,
Yeah.
in baseball, if you only have data for like some data has only been collected 5 years, but it takes 20 years for like injuries to appear or for your just you are aging as a human. If you have 20 years of data, you have a great moat, since those insights, um, the longer data you have in certain situations, the more insights you have. So traditional companies, banking companies that have been around 100 years, they have data on human behavior. They have data on,
Yeah.
markets are dynamic. In basketball, the game shifted from shooting 2 points to shooting 3 points. So much so that the whole dynamics of the game changed. Teams are now recruiting college players that can shoot 3 shots. High school players are now learning to shoot 3 point shots so they can get into college, so they can get drafted. So it's like a dynamic system. And that's another thing all the listeners should recognize is companies aren't going to sit still. Going to be changing their data. They're going to be changing how they use AI to get efficiencies internally. And so the behavior is going to change. I think companies are going to be shifting even more to spend on startups, mixing in with like more established platforms.
And some of the data currently that we see today, all the recycled data. I mean, this all same data over and over again that you're querying and you're getting it out. Came across a company called Mercer some few weeks ago. They are the ones who are hiring specialized PhDs and SMEs and paying them high dollar to create some specialized subject matter knowledge. So if you're hiring a factory worker or if you're hiring a lawyer or a
Mm-hmm.
doctor, you're really gathering their insights that they have over the last several years, specialized knowledge. Within 1.5 years, I think the revenue went up to $450 million.
It doesn't have to be a tech company, like lawyers. Do the ability to do legal research. If you have someone who's an expert and can encapsulate some of the knowledge and terminology, and then sell that back to help like legal research company, you could have one lawyer do the work, at least in the research part, of what 20 employees could do, or like medical, like doctors or imaging, or being able to like understand patient behavior. Um, these are all job opportunities where you are the expert, you're the PhD, you're the doctor, you're the lawyer, you're the fireman, and you're encapsulating your knowledge, and then you could sell that off. It's like a subrata in a box. Sell your knowledge that other people could encapsulate, and that is where you can make money. And that's really, if you look at sci-fi science fiction shows from decades ago, it's almost like you eat a pill and you instantly know um, how to everything you need to know about plant biology. It's similar now. These are the companies making these very specialized expert systems, better than what generalized AI could do. You're taking the time to make these rules, make these definitions, try it out, do the gut test. So those are more like AI informational companies,
Yeah.
and and that's not even technology. Yeah,
Okay, so let's pull all this together. So we talked about what systemic approach actually really work, infrastructure you need, how the market's evolving, where the startups can win, the baseball analogy. Looking at all these patterns that you are seeing, where do you think the AI landscape actually ends up at the end of 2025? Are we really heading towards this winner take all platform consolidation? Or is there any real room for specialized players to build something sustainable business?
yeah. To sum it up, 100%, tons of room. From my experience with Databricks, we have 5,000 partners, and a gazillion more that want to partner. And there is so much value in the partner landscape. 100%, that's going to continue to grow. The world of data and AI is evolving super fast. So that adds a ton of opportunities. It also adds a ton of noise. So it's going to be more and more of a challenge to articulate what you do without just sounding like buzzwords. So work on your brand and your identity. Um, and yeah, it's just I see it as an extremely fast growing, fast changing. The trends that we see are these agentic systems. uh, we see like having these unified platforms on the data side, so you can have structured, unstructured, real-time streaming, batch, all being able to be analyzed at more and more scale. And I guess the newest trend are these AI driven applications.
Yep.
That the market's not really mature there. We started our entree there a couple months ago in June. Other companies kind of started dipping their toe in June as well. So not even a half a year into the market, not fully mature yet, but I think we're going to be seeing applications and visualizations driven by AI the next year for sure, but probably next 2, 3, 4 years.
Great. Any final comments on what we discussed so far, or is there anything else that you want to say before we move to the final closing?
No, I think it's great. This is almost final closing, but yeah, if you've lasted this long listening in, totally appreciate you being a part of it.
First of all, thank you so much, Ari, for taking the time. And what's really, to me, is a fascinating conversation, first of all, is, and also when we look at this entire era that we are in, is a very inflection point. And this era is just experimenting with AI is probably ending, and the era of actually delivering value is beginning, and the success is not going to be about model selection, model performance, or about funding announcements anymore. It's going to be about how can we really make production systems happen genuinely that improves the customer business value and outcomes. We talked about governance a lot. We talked about architecture a lot. We also spend a lot of time on teams in terms of not just high paying individuals, but it's about how do you really select talent. We talked about human in the loop, and enterprise adoption that you can measure the real ROI. Is there anything else, Ari, that I probably missed?
No, that was an incredible summary. Um, you covered a lot of great topics. Hopefully, inspired people, help guide people, give people new ideas, and I loved listening to some of the earlier podcasts as well. But hopefully, this builds upon the foundation of podcasts that you've had. And yeah, just want to wish everybody the best of luck in their journey. It's a brave new world, and there are a ton of opportunities out there. Hope to hear some successes out from people.
And if people want to reach out to you, make a comment, you can suggest if they want to do that and
Yeah.
where they can reach you.
Yeah, my favorite thing is on LinkedIn. I
Yeah.
post many times a week my world travels. Um, Subrata was mentioning I also take photographs of when I vacation before and after. I travel all around the world, but it's really about meeting customers. I do it in like a non-sales way. I try to be educational. So if you want to follow or connect, um, I give my insights and perspectives as the world changes. I'll hopefully keep them relevant.
Fantastic.
So LinkedIn is my favorite. Yeah.
And to everyone listening, if this changed the way you're thinking about AI strategy, hit that subscribe now so you don't miss our next deep dive. And if you found value in what Ari shared, especially that 55% to 85% accuracy jump with the compound system, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Got a question about implementing those frameworks or your own enterprise AI pattern to share? Connect with Ari on LinkedIn. Next on the Spark and the Forge, Wendy Turner Williams from the Association.ai and the former CDO at Tableau joins us to talk about something fascinating and how she's turning the whole company's crisis into competitive gold and why governance actually becomes your strategic advantage rather than the thing that kills innovation. Until next time, focus on outcomes, not outputs. Measure the value that you are delivering and not just technology that you're deploying. I'm Subrata Kar. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.